Hi, in this video, I'm going to introduce you to this book, Gospel Parallels, a comparison of the Synoptic Gospels, edited by Burton Throckmorton. This is a very useful book. In it, you will find the parallel material from each of the first three Gospels, called the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, arranged in parallel columns. There are some tricky aspects to using this particular Gospel Parallels, which is also called a synopsis, by the way. And I'm going to try to step you through some of the key symbols and marks that are used, as well as differences in typeset that will clue you into particular features of the synopsis and how it conveys its information. So anyway, great book. You're going to be spending quite a bit of time looking at for this exercise that you're going to be doing, looking at the preface to the 5th edition. It has an explanation of some of the key features. There is a copy of it uploaded on the assignment page in Google Classroom. And I have a copy here that I'll be showing you. So I'm going to share my screen. There might be a little bit of moving around here as I do this. Okay, good. It came right up. There's the preface to the 5th edition. And you'll see here that you've got various kinds of explanations, and I've indicated page numbers for you to see an example of what is being described. Before I get there, there is one thing that is a little bit puzzling about this synopsis. I think it's one of the most difficult things to use a synopsis, and so I want to explain that first. And that is the feature, a particular feature is that many of the pericopes or small units within the Gospels will be presented more than one time. And that gets a little confusing. Like, why is it coming up so many different times? Also, sometimes it's in regular typeface and sometimes it's in italic typeface. That phenomenon of multiple appearances of particular pericopes and the different typefaces has to do with the fact that the parallel stories or units are not perfectly parallel. There are differences among them, sometimes fairly substantial differences. That's one thing. The other is that they don't appear in the same order. Now, often they do. So for example, Matthew often follows the order of presentation of Mark, but he doesn't follow it perfectly, and Luke deviates from it quite a bit. So the authors of Throckmorton, in laying out this Gospel Parallels, puts a pericope in at least twice, usually, because he wants to indicate what it looks like when it's in the flow of its narrative as it appears in the Gospel, and also how it looks when it's taken out of its normal place so that it can be arrayed alongside the material to which it is parallel. So I will try to demonstrate that here. I think I've accidentally closed the item that I wanted to show, so I have to pull it up here. I put in this so I would remember to tell you, this little marker or siglum or symbol, whatever you want to call it, is the marker that introduces a pericope. A pericope, again, is a small bounded unit. So if I say refer to pericope 60, then it's going to be this sign followed by 60. It might be on a different page. It might be on page 38, for example. I'm just making up that number, but you get the idea. So this introduces the pericope number. Okay, now looking at this, again, why do so many pericopes appear more than once in the Gospel Parallels, sometimes in italic and sometimes not? Answer, short answer, whenever the actual Gospels sequence their material, their parallel material differently, that is, put it in different order, the Gospel Parallels will present the material twice, sometimes more, so that it can be shown in its proper order for each Gospel. Whenever a pericope is presented out of order, it will be in italic or italics, okay? So I've tried to create a sort of little artificial example here to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So imagine that this is a table of contents of the actual synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And there are 5 pericopes that are parallel in sequence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. in Matthew and Mark. So Matthew has pericope A, pericope B, C, D, E. Mark has parallel material. I've designated it with a little prime symbol, so A prime, B prime, C prime, etc. Luke has a double prime. It's similar to more or less the same story as was in Matthew and slightly varied in Mark, but now it's Luke's version. So we'll say A double prime, B double prime, C double prime. But in Luke's gospel, imagine these two pericopes are not in the same order. Luke, for whatever reason, puts this pericope, which we've labeled E, I've labeled E, before the one I've labeled D. So in this hypothetical example, Luke has pericopes D and E in an order that is different from that in Matthew and Mark. Okay, so let's say these 5 pericopes are going to now be presented twice, at least, in Throckmorton. Okay, so in Matthew and Mark, because they follow the exact same order, they'll just flow along. You'll have pericope 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it will have columns with Matthew and Mark parallel. All right. So, and you'll know that because the heading for the column for that pericope will be in boldface, non-italic font. Over here in Luke, A, B, and C, double prime, all follow the same order as A, B, and C in Matthew and Mark. So there too, you've got boldface, non-italic for your heading. But now look what happens when we get down to pericopes D and E. Remember that they were in a different order in Luke. The Throckmorton wants to put it next to D because he wants you to see it as a parallel, but he also wants to clue you in that it's now appearing in a different place than it actually occurs in Luke if you were to open your Bible and look at Luke. Okay, so to signal that, he's put the heading in non-boldface italic font. And in fact, the entire content of those pericopes will be in italic font. So if you come to an italic font story or pericope in your gospel parallels, you know that it is not in its regular sequence as it would be if you opened your Bible. Okay, so that's why you get that difference in typeface. Throckmorton's going to present the whole thing one more time, at least. And I say at least because there are other conditions that can make it be sometimes presented even more than twice, but we won't go into that. Right now, what we'll look at is we'll see that here in this second presentation, Throckmorton allows Luke to be in his regular sequence. So you've got A, B, C. Remember, Luke puts this one in the middle or in between C and E, so E and D, but it's all in boldface. Ignore the size difference, that's a mistake. So it's all in boldface, cluing you in to the fact that in this presentation, Luke is the one who determines the order of the pericopes. Over here in Matthew and Mark, you've got pericope A, B, and C, all in boldface, non-italic, but then we get to E and D, and they want to put it here because they want to show you that they have this parallel to Luke, but they put it in non-boldface italic to show you that for Matthew and Mark, these two pericopes are out of order. So there, I'm trying to explain why a number of, if not most, pericopes appear more than once in this gospel parallels, and why sometimes they're in italic font. Italic font signifies that they are out of order. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about some of the other symbols that occur in the, let's see, I've got to get back to my preface. Where is that? I think it's here. No. Ah, there we go. Okay, so so that's this one. It's page 79, out of order. Okay, I'm gonna show you an example of that now. Okay, so here's page 79, and you can see that you've got Matthew and Mark. Mark doesn't have a parallel, so there's nothing there. But Matthew is in boldface. Luke is in italic non-boldface font. That tells you that Luke is not presenting, that Throckmorton is not presenting this in the Lucan order. A couple of other things, another thing to look at, you'll see right here, you've got this little upward pointing triangle, and this right here. This is showing you that if you wanted to go to the preceding pericope, the one that's prior to Luke 13:20 to 21, in the order that Luke presents, you would go to pericope number 164, page 129. That's because all of the places where Luke is in his own order tend to appear toward the end of the gospel parallels. So if you wanted to see Luke in his own order, you go, the preceding pericope, you go to this. So that's the first thing I wanted to show. Let's see if I can get back to my, okay, so that's that example. Parallels to the canonical gospels found in the Gospel of Thomas have been supplemented, and they are included in the footnotes. You're going to see that they occur because Gospel of Thomas is a non-canonical gospel. It's going to occur with a particular symbol in front. So this little thing here, it looks like a solid half semicircle, indicates parallels in non-canonical writings. So we'll look at an example of that now. So we're going to go for that to page 73. Okay, so here's page 73, and we go down to the bottom. There you go. Here you've got your little half semicircle solid sign, and you've got a reference to the Gospel of the Ebionites. I thought this was going to be Gospel of Thomas. Well, at any rate, sometimes you'll get ones for the Gospel of Thomas. They're Gospel of the Ebionites, Gospel of Thomas, both non-canonical Gospels. So again, both introduced with this particular symbol. Okay, what comes next? I've explained this to you, but I'll go over it again. When one is reading a pericope which is in its own order in the gospel, but which has been separated from what precedes or follows it, one is told at the beginning of the pericope where the preceding verse is to be found, and one is told at the end of the pericope where the next verse may be found. See, for example, number 45 for an illustration of both situations. So let's see if we can find that. Well, I don't think I did page 45. What did I say? I said page 38. That was my example. Okay, so page 38 here, it shows you where to find the preceding verses in their own order. And well, I thought it was going to tell me where. I'm sorry, I'm a little confused here. But sometimes if it wants to show you where the next verses are in their own order, it will have that same thing here, but with a downward pointing arrow saying, for your next version, your next place, look at this, whatever pericope is listed right here with a downward pointing arrow. Okay. When a column contains verses in addition to those stipulated in the heading, that fact is indicated by a plus sign in the heading. Okay, so we'll look at page 23 for an example of that. Okay, so notice here you've got Luke 4 verses 44, verse 44, and then you've got this plus sign. And the same thing over here with Mark. What that's telling you is that Luke has a parallel to parts of this Matthean passage, but they're not in the same place. He's broken apart that material and put it in two different places. Okay, so here, notice how it's a little confusing because here it's bold-faced, non-italic, and that's because this verse is following the order of Matthew at this point. Okay, but, or it's following in its Lucan sequence at this point. But in order, then you come to this verse over here, verse 24, his fame spread throughout all Syria. They brought to him all the sick who were afflicted with various diseases and pains. Throckmorton thinks that this is a parallel to that Luke has probably taken it from the same source, but notice how he's put it in a different place. So whereas this verse is in Luke 4:44, this verse is in Luke 6:18. So Throckmorton has gone ahead and pulled out this verse from these verses from later in Luke and put them here parallel next to Matthew so that you can see that parallel material exists. Notice though, again, two clues. One is the plus sign that alerts you that there's going to be some material inserted from out of context. And 2, it's in italic. So now you know that italic means this is not in its Lucan sequence. Okay, so that explains why you get the plus sign. Let's go back to our next feature. When there is a parallel of sorts, not necessarily literary and not printed in the columns, it will nevertheless often be indicated. So it's a very imperfect parallel. Usually they want you to know it's there. It's kind of similar, but it's not exact. Okay. So he gives you an example here. I'm going to show you an example from page 13. Okay. So here, if we scroll down a bit, right here. Okay. John's imprisonment. I think this is actually maybe the one he was talking about. I'm not sure. But anyway, Herod the ruler, who had been rebuked by him because of Herodias, his brother's wife, and because of all the evil things that Herod had done, added to them all by shutting up John in prison. Okay, notice that over here in Matthew and Mark, you've got CF. That means compare. So compare Matthew 14, 3-4. Compare Mark 6, 17-18. These are not perfect parallels, but they do pertain to the imprisonment of John. And so Throckmorton wants you to know they're there, but they're so dissimilar that he doesn't see fit to put them as an actual parallel. So that's why sometimes you get these citations without an actual inclusion of the content of that particular passage. And then down here, I didn't put any examples here, but again, you've got these various symbols and they introduce the footnotes. So different, rather than just numbering the footnotes, they give you these symbols because they want to show you that each type of footnote is including different material. I've already showed you how some of the footnotes include non-canonical material. What we have in this particular, in some of these other ones pertain to cross-references from the Old Testament, cross-references from other parts of the New Testament, or inclusion of material related to text critical variants, that is, places where the manuscripts differed. So that's basically all I have to explain to you for this particular exercise. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me or Professor Hong by email. That's all. Bye.